Have you ever had something so precious, so tied to your family's history, ripped away from you by the one person who should have protected it? I'm talking about a betrayal that hits like a punch to the gut, leaving you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust and loyalty. That's the nightmare I've lived through, and I'm still not sure if I've come out the other side whole. This isn't just about a thing. It's about legacy, love, and the raw, messy fight to reclaim what's yours when the odds are stacked against you. I'm going to take you through every heart-wrenching moment. The day I found out my dad gave away our family's most treasured heirloom, the anger and heartbreak that nearly broke me, and a shocking truth that turned my world upside down. Stick with me, because I've clawed my way through this mess, and I need your help to figure out if I've truly found peace or if there's more to fight for. Let's dive into the most painful chapter of my life. My name's Ethan, and I'm 29 now, living in a small, weathered house on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, a mountain town nestled in the Blue Ridge, where the air smells of pine and the rolling hills seem to hold secrets in their misty folds. Asheville's got this artsy, laid-back vibe with its historic Biltmore Village and bustling downtown full of breweries and buskers. But beyond the tourist spots, it's a place of quiet struggle for folks like me. I work as a carpenter, spending my days sanding wood and hammering nails in a local workshop off Hendersonville Road, trying to build more than just furniture after the storm I've weathered. The heart of this story, the wound that still aches, is how my dad, Robert, gave away our family's cherished heirloom, a hand-carved wooden chest that belonged to my great-grandfather, to a complete stranger in the fall of 2017, a decision that shattered my sense of family and sent me on a desperate mission to get it back. Dad's 62 now, a retired factory worker with a gruff exterior and a stubborn streak, a man who raised me mostly on his own after Mom passed when I was 8, and who's always been a complicated mix of provider and enigma. The emotional conflict tearing me apart was the clash between my deep-rooted respect for him, built on years of watching him grind to keep us afloat, and the searing anger and hurt I felt over his betrayal, making me question if I ever really knew him at all. The unexpected twist came in late 2019, when I discovered that Dad didn't just give the chest away out of carelessness. He'd been manipulated by someone he trusted, a supposed friend who preyed on his vulnerabilities during a dark time. This all unfolds in Asheville from 2017 to 2023, with the misty mountains, the winding roads of the Blue Ridge Parkway, and the town's quirky, tight-knit community as the backdrop to my struggle. Memories of the chest and what it meant to our family flood me as I sit in my workshop late at night, the smell of sawdust grounding me while I plane a piece of oak, pulling me back to days before everything fell apart. I think about when I was a kid, maybe 6 or 7, sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor of our old house near West Asheville, watching Dad open the chest to show me the treasures inside. Old letters from my great-grandfather, a pocket watch, faded photos of kin I'd never met. I remember the intricate carvings on the lid, scenes of mountain life etched by hand, and Dad's rough voice telling me stories of how it survived the Great Depression, passed down as a symbol of resilience. Now, flipping through a worn family album, pictures of me and Dad at the Biltmore estate, or fishing in the French Broad River, I wonder how something so sacred could be discarded and why I didn't fight harder to protect it sooner. The nightmare began on a crisp October morning in 2017, during one of Asheville's stunning fall seasons, when the leaves turn fiery red and gold, and the air carries a chill that creeps into your bones. I'd stopped by Dad's place, a modest cabin off Brevard Road, after a long day at the workshop, just to check in, when I noticed the chest was missing from its usual spot in the living room by the stone fireplace. My heart sank as I scanned the room, the familiar creak of the floorboards underfoot suddenly ominous, and when I asked him about it, his vague shrug and mumbled excuse about finding a better home for it hit me like a brick. Standing there, the faint scent of his coffee lingering in the air, I felt a mix of disbelief and rage, unable to grasp why he'd give away something so tied to our blood without even telling me, marking the start of a fracture I didn't know how to mend. The weight of his decision didn't fully hit until days later, as I sat in my truck parked along the Blue Ridge Parkway, the vast mountain views stretching out before me, mocking the smallness I felt inside. He'd admitted, after I pressed him, that he'd given the chest to a guy named Carl, someone he'd met at a local VFW hall, claiming Carl needed it more for reasons he wouldn't explain. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could a stranger's need outweigh our family's history? I'd lie awake in my tiny rental at the time, the distant hoot of owls outside my window blending with my spiraling thoughts, torn between the love I had for Dad, who'd worked overtime shifts to buy me school clothes, and the betrayal of him tossing aside something I'd always seen as ours. Asheville's autumn beauty, The farmers' markets bustling on Pack Square, the golden glow over the mountains, felt like a cruel contrast to the storm brewing in me, a reminder of roots I was losing grip on. The emotional toll deepened through 2018 as I wrestled with the loss of the chest and what it represented, each day a reminder of a legacy slipping through my fingers. I tried talking to Dad again, driving to his cabin on rainy evenings, the windshield wipers slapping as I rehearsed what to say, but his gruff dismissals, saying I was too attached to old junk, only fueled my anger, leaving me feeling like a kid again, powerless against his stubbornness. I'd escaped to the trails near the North Carolina Arboretum, hiking through dense forests while the ache of missing Mom, who'd loved that chest too, mixed with frustration at Dad, wondering if I'd failed to honor her memory by not fighting harder. My work suffered. I'd mess up measurements, my hands shaky with distraction, and every carved piece of wood I touched at the shop felt like a taunt, a pale imitation of the chest's craftsmanship, while the mountain fog rolling in seemed to mirror the haze in my heart. Determined to reclaim what was mine, I started tracking down this Carl guy in early 2019, turning my hurt into a quiet mission, even as I battled doubts about confronting Dad further. I spent weeks asking around at the VFW hall near downtown, the smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke clinging to the air as I pieced together rumors about Carl, a drifter type who'd moved around the county. I drive the winding roads of Buncombe County on my days off, the Smoky Mountains looming in the distance, chasing leads to rundown trailers and dive bars, each dead end a punch to my resolve, but also a spark to keep going, fueled by memories of running my fingers over the chest's carvings as a boy. Asheville's tight-knit gossip, folks at the corner diner or the Saturday market dropping hints over coffee, kept me pushing, though every step carried the weight of Dad's silence, and I wasn't sure if I was chasing the chest or some deeper answer about why he'd let it go. The unexpected twist slammed into me in November 2019, on a dreary evening after a long day of dead-end searches, when the truth about Dad's decision came to light, reshaping my anger into a tangled mess of pity and frustration. I'd finally tracked Carl to a shabby apartment complex in East Asheville, and after a tense exchange through a cracked door, he didn't have the chest anymore, having pawned it months ago. He let slip that Dad hadn't just given it away out of kindness. Carl admitted he'd spun a sob story about needing money for a sick kid, preying on Dad's loneliness after a rough patch of health scares and drinking, manipulating him into handing over the chest as collateral for a loan that was never real. Sitting in my truck outside Carl's place, the rain pelting the windshield, I felt a storm of emotions: fury at Carl's deceit, heartbreak for Dad's vulnerability, and guilt for assuming the worst about him, all while the distant glow of Asheville's skyline seemed to mock my shattered assumptions. Reeling from this revelation, I threw myself into finding the chest at the pawn shop Carl mentioned, a grimy spot off Tunnel Road, turning my pain into a stubborn resolve, even as I wrestled with what this meant for me and Dad. I didn't confront Dad about Carl's story, not yet, too raw to face him, instead spending hours negotiating with the pawn shop owner, a hard-nosed guy who'd already sold the chest to a collector in Charlotte. I started saving every spare dime from my carpentry gigs, taking on extra jobs like building custom shelves for local businesses, my hands aching as I worked late into the night, each dollar a step closer to buying it back. Asheville's winter chill, the icy winds whipping through the streets, the holiday lights on Montfort Avenue a stark contrast to my dark mood, felt like a test of my grit, though every step forward carried the weight of Dad's unspoken pain, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever bridge the gap between us. Reflecting on my past with Dad became a near-constant loop, especially on quiet nights in my workshop, the hum of a space heater grounding me as I thought about what we'd been through. I'd remember the good times, like when he'd take me to the Asheville tourist baseball games as a kid, both of us cheering over hot dogs, dreaming of simpler days, a memory now tainted by the image of him handing over the chest in my mind. I recalled the day he taught me to whittle, sitting on his porch with the mountain breeze cooling us, a moment now overshadowed by the loss of the very heirloom tied to that craft. I'd sit on an old stool, staring at the Blue Ridge through my window, wondering if I'd ignored signs of his struggles after Mom died, or if I'd been too quick to judge him. Asheville's renewal, spring blooms along the Riverwalk, the buzz of the arts district, felt like a challenge to my stagnation, pushing me to decide if I could rebuild with him or if the hurt ran too deep. The grind of tracking down the chest stretched into 2020 and beyond, with the pandemic slowing my search, but not my resolve, as the weight of Dad's manipulation by Carl lingered like the fog over the mountains. I managed to contact the collector in Charlotte via email, a slow back and forth as I explained the chest's history, my savings growing painfully slow while I took on odd jobs, repairing decks, even delivering groceries, coming home to a fridge with just leftovers while the world shut down around me. I'd escape to the quiet of Looking Glass Falls on rare days off, the roar of the water drowning my spiraling thoughts, questioning if I'd been too hard on Dad, if I should have seen his loneliness, or if my obsession with the chest was more about proving something to myself. Asheville's eerie stillness during lockdown, empty streets downtown, the silence of shuttered galleries, mirrored my isolation, each day a battle to keep hope alive while the chest felt further away than ever. By late 2021, I'd scraped together enough to make an offer to the collector, a nerve-wracking moment after months of emails, though the unresolved hurt with Dad lingered like the damp chill of a mountain morning. The collector, moved by my story, agreed to sell it back for a steep price, and I drove to Charlotte in a borrowed van. The 130-mile trip along I-40 a blur of nerves and anticipation, my heart pounding as I finally held the chest again, running my fingers over the familiar carvings in a dingy parking lot. I moved it into my small house, a quiet victory as I set it by my fireplace, though trust with Dad remained a distant hope, tested by every avoided call I made to him. Unsure if I'd mention Carl or just let the truth fester. Asheville's rugged spirit, the resilience of folks rebuilding after floods or hard winters, kept me grounded, though every glance at the chest carried a mix of triumph and unanswered questions about my relationship with him. The emotional weight of reclaiming the chest while carrying this betrayal felt like hiking up Mount Pisgah after a storm, each step forward shadowed by a past I couldn't fully shake. I'd run into old neighbors at local spots like the Wedge Brewery, their casual "how's your dad?" questions a minefield, forcing me to dodge with half-smiles while inside I burned with the secret of Carl's manipulation, a weight I'd only shared with a close friend at the workshop. I started second-guessing my silence with Dad, wondering if I'd been too harsh in pulling back, or if closure meant a raw conversation about his vulnerability, a thought that kept me up on nights when the mountain wind howled louder than my resolve. I even considered inviting him over to see the chest, floating the idea during quiet moments sanding wood, but backed out each time, scared of what I'd uncover about my own lingering anger, unsure if it'd help us heal or just stir more pain. Driving along the winding Blue Ridge Parkway, past breathtaking vistas, I wrestled with whether I'd let this betrayal steal too much from me, or if I'd reclaimed enough by getting the chest back. The weight of Dad's decision and my own lingering doubts didn't fade easily. Even as I pushed forward, each memory of the chest a reminder of how fragile family ties can be. I'd spend hours in my small backyard, restoring the chest's worn edges with careful sanding, finding an old photo of me and Dad at the Folk Art Center tucked in my toolbox, and feel a pang of longing for the bond we'd lost, now replaced by a guarded hope when I'd get a rare, gruff voicemail from him. I started avoiding family gatherings beyond quick check-ins, unable to sit through hours of small talk with him there, wondering if he ever regretted giving the chest away or if he still saw it as no big deal. I'd walk through downtown Asheville on quiet evenings, past the street performers and murals, feeling like a stranger in my own story, asking myself if I'd been too quick to pull away or if that distance was the only way to protect the peace I'd fought for. The town's vibe, the mix of history and reinvention, felt like a mirror to my inner struggle, a reminder that moving on wasn't just about reclaiming an object, but about living with the scar of broken trust. By mid-2023, I'd carved out a life I could call stable, with my carpentry work offering steady pay and the chest back where it belonged, though not unscathed by the journey. I celebrated small victories, like a solo hike to Black Balsam Knob, standing atop the bald with the wind whipping around me, a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years, though I still caught flickers of resentment in my reflection during quiet moments, a reminder of the trust one was still rebuilding with myself. Yet, every time I'd hear from Dad, a rare attempt to reconnect, usually a quick call about fixing something at his cabin, I'd feel that old mix of anger and curiosity, wondering if we'd ever truly address Carl's manipulation or if we were doomed to this surface-level dance. I started mentoring a kid at a local community center, teaching him basic woodworking, the act of bomb and a blade, unsure if I was healing or just hiding from the bigger questions about my relationship with Dad. Reflecting on the journey to reclaim the chest and wrestle with Dad's betrayal, I spent a lot of time wandering Asheville's quieter edges, like the paths along the Swannanoa River, the mountain horizon a somber mirror to my mood as I thought about what I'd gained and lost. I'd remember the early days with Dad, sneaking late-night drives to watch the city lights from a lookout on Town Mountain Road, dreaming of a future while the stars glowed, a hope now tainted by the memory of the chest's absence. I thought about his quiet strength growing up, fixing our leaky roof alone after a storm, a grit now warped by the secret of his vulnerability to Carl, reduced to fleeting, awkward calls if I reach out. I'd sit on riverbanks, sketching furniture designs in the fading light, wondering if I'd been too naive to see his struggles, or if I'd ignored red flags in his isolation over the years. Asheville's harsh beauty, the endless ridges, the misty peaks, felt like a challenge, pushing me to decide if I'd let this hurt define me, or if I could forge something new despite it. Now, as I sit here in my house, the soft glow of a lantern casting shadows on the chest by the fireplace, the distant sound of crickets drifting through the cracked window, I'm still wrestling with where to go from here. My life feels steadier, with the chest back and my work grounding me, but not whole, not yet. There are nights when I stare at my phone, wondering if sitting down with Dad to talk about Carl and that dark time could mend something, or if it'd just reopen the wound. And then there's my own heart. Part of me wants to rebuild with him, to understand why he was so easily swayed, maybe even help him if he's still struggling. But another part of me just wants to focus on my own future, to stop letting his choices loom over me, maybe even expand my workshop into something bigger. This town's taught me resilience, with its history of surviving floods and hard times, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to face that part of my past head-on. So, I'm turning to you, my listeners, because I'm at a crossroads and I could really use your perspective. Have you ever had a family member betray something sacred to you, leaving you to pick up the pieces, and had to fight to reclaim what mattered? How did you handle it? Did you confront them, give them space, or just focus on rebuilding yourself? I'm torn between reaching out to Dad for one last honest conversation, risking more hurt, or letting the past stay buried and moving forward on my own terms. What would you do in my shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I'm still figuring out how to honor the love I had for him without losing more of myself in the process. Thanks for listening to my story. I'll see you in the next one.